Hey guys, Stephen here from Vanguard Tactics. I have got an incredible video for you lined up. Today I have got a very special interview with Geoff Robinson, iNcontroL TV, and we are talking all things Genestealer Cult. We're going to be covering some of their strongest units, some of the strongest combos, and also how to play and also beat Genestealer Cult. This is an incredible interview with Geoff, and I really delve into some of the minutiae to give you guys a much better understanding of how to play and beat Genestealer Cult. We also talk about some of the best combos with allies, with Tyrannids, and also Imperial Guard. Which are the strongest combos? I'll let you decide. So before we go into this interview with Geoff, I just want to say a massive thank you to Geoff for coming onto the show, and definitely check his site out, which is iNcontroL TV over on YouTube, Instagram, and also Twitter and Facebook. Now, one thing I've put together over on my email list, which is www.vanguardtactics.com, is a aberrants cheat sheet. So what I've done is I've broken down all of the strongest combos around aberrants with the characters that buff, the stratagems, the relics, the vigilus detachments, all into one cheat sheet, and I'm going to give you access to that along with loads of other goodies like my night cheat sheet, how to beat knights, video cast. So loads of good stuff completely for free over on the Vanguard Tactics website. You just need to sign up for your email, and we're going to send you all the links that you need for all those goodies. So again, that's www.vanguardtactics.com. So over to the interview with Geoff. Geoff Robinson, how you doing, mate?
Good. Thanks for having me on, man.
Mate, no, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And I want to add a lot more to obviously this channel as it stands. Obviously, we do our sort of battle analysis, and we do our live shows where we chat shop about obviously tactics and bits and bobs. But I thought it'd be amazing to bring you on to really delve into a little bit deeper into some of these sort of the minutiae of tactical play around some of these really cool armies that are out at the moment. Because I just think you've got such a great insight in regards to the game. You've got a great outlook. You know, you're an incredible player, and you were an absolute pleasure when we had our game last year. So I thought, what a great opportunity to get you on, mate. So thanks so much.
Yeah. Well, likewise, man. I've been watching your stuff. It's just good to see it grow, and it's fun to talk.
Oh, no, wicked. Because the whole purpose of this channel is to just help more people get into competitive play. So whether they're like a club player and they're thinking about doing a tournament, or maybe they've started to do a couple of tournaments but want to start breaking into the top half, or go 3-2 or 4-2, whatever it is. What are the things that we need to know in order to sort of minimize our errors and maximize our opportunities, basically. So yeah, mate. So just for the guys then, if they're not familiar with your kind of work in the Warhammer community, what is it that you kind of do at the moment, and what's your involvement in the hobby and all that kind of good stuff?
I guess the quickest way to say it would be that I'm good friends with Frankie and Reese, who founded and created the ITC, kind of started playing and learning competitive Warhammer in their shop and playing with them. They're two of my best friends in the whole world. So alongside that comes, Team Zero Comp, which is a very prolific team, and then traveling around mostly the United States and competing in the biggest tournaments and having a good time with that. But then that changed into, now I'm on the ETC team for Team USA, so I'll be going to Serbia this year to compete on behalf of Team USA. I went to the London GT and Invitational. I did win the Invitational last year, so that was really cool. It's a big honor. And then outside of that, this last year, I've been working alongside Games Workshop itself to bring commentary and just kind of a bigger media presence for the lovely game of Warhammer 40,000. And I'm happy to say I've casted Nova and LVO, and soon, actually, as of tomorrow, I don't know when this goes live, but soon Adepticon, and then Nova again. And then we have some other stuff in the works. So I'm working alongside the company that makes the game that I love, and I'm traveling the world playing the game that I love. It's a dream.
Mate, that's wicked. No, absolutely wicked. And I remember one of the things that kind of when we played last year at the LTT, I loved the way that you played. And
thank you.
Actually something that that was only my, I think, third competitive tournament I'd done. And I just love the way that you approached the start of the game. And that was essentially, you said to me, Steve, great to meet you. I want to reach the end of this game. I want to reach turn 7. I want to play by the kind of the rules that are written. And I love that, mate. And do you know what? Yeah. I do that in every single game I go to now.
I swear by it. It's one of my first go-tos for advice is like, if you clearly state kind of what your expectations are and what you want out of a game, I find that it puts your opponent at ease as well, because it doesn't become this weird, like, who's going to say it and how, are they upset about this or that? And it's been amazing. I call it the social contract of sorts, but some people it's a little bit too intense for them, but I find the bigger the tournament you go to and the better the player you play, the more they appreciate that anyways. So it's worked well for me.
Yeah, and I think it actually really relaxes people that are maybe not that, worried, you're going to try and game them or anything. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. So I recently went to a tournament in Birmingham. It's like a 100-man event. And I used a chess clock in every single game. Mm-hmm. Even in the games where I thought this game's easily going to go to time, easily going to be finished within the time, I just said it and I said, look, hey, I'd really love to use this. You can spend as long as you want making decisions that you want to make. I can spend as long as, so if there's a real key moment, you want to spend 10 minutes thinking about it, that's cool. I'm not going to be sat there breathing down your neck. You don't have to worry. Am I thinking of you, and all that kind of stuff. You do what you do, I'll do me. And do you know what? And I said also the reason why I want to do it in this game, because I want to do it in every game. So nobody feels like I'm saying, you've got a horde army, I'm going to put a chess clock on you. It's just, if you face me on the table, I'm just going to play over clock. And if that's right. And I finished that tournament with 5 out of 5 favorite game votes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So that is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So, and I also had 4 wins. So you can't do much better than 4 wins and 5 favorite game votes. Maybe 5 wins and 5 favorite game votes. Anyway, there's room for improvement, right?
No, but you play a brutal list, you're a great player, and you are getting people to vote for you as the favorite game. It's a very good sign, because I think it's kind of a misconception that in order to be a good Warhammer player, you have to be unpleasant to play against. It's so not the case at all.
Yeah.
You can take a very powerful army, you can be a very good general, and you can unfortunately beat the face out of your opponent. But if you're courteous about it, you're open about it, and you're not making it so that they don't have a good time in terms of like you said, breathing down their neck, or if a rules dispute comes up and you're like, wow, that's totally wrong, how can you even think that's acceptable? Instead, just being like, hey, I'm not sure about that. Do you mind if we look it up? And it's really, and that's part of the reason why I just swear by Warhammer as such an amazing game. It gets you outside, gets you talking to people, but it's also like, it can be an incredible, useful tool for socialization, right? Because you're going to disagree on things, you're going to misremember stuff, and you deal with this all the time in Europe, I'm sure, but there's just different metas, there's different interpretations of rules. So it's like absolutely natural that it comes up, and how you handle it's so important. So that's good to hear.
Now you get people that are very loose with the rules and want to play as they believe it should be intended. And then you get other people that want to play more just, this is the written rule of the book.
Yeah.
And I think it's finding your line as to where you want to sit with that. And I think, again, with that social contract as well, like you sort of spoke about, it's a case of, I always open with, look, I just want the best general today to win. Mm-hmm. That's it. I don't want any weird moments or anything like that to dictate the success of this.
Yeah.
So I always discuss, look, let's have a little chat about terrain. Are you happy if you were on this side? Are you happy if you're on that side? So let's look at it, because that might be a thing. Or are you happy with the objectives going down here? And all that kind of good stuff. So no, mate. So that's amazing to have you. And I'm, when I heard that you were part of, obviously, the system in regards to making the game better, I was like, okay, yeah, I think the game's in some pretty safe hands there. So
thank you. Yeah.
So anyway, Geoff, the reason why I've got you on today is Genestealer Cult.
Mm-hmm.
You were playing Genestealer Cult back in quite a bit with their Index.
7th, yeah.
Yeah. Have you been playing much Index 8th edition Cult?
Yep, I played a bunch of the Index, and then I had my hands on the material well in advance, so I played a bunch of codex Genestealer Cult as well.
What's your initial thoughts with them?
I will say that they are, in my opinion, one of the highest skill ceiling armies that you can play right now. And what I mean by that is when you write a good list and you play it the way it's meant to be, and you execute kind of the maneuvers they're supposed to, it feels incredibly good, because it does not, because this is not to take away from other lists or other types of armies, but there are some units out there where it's just like, I shoot that and it probably dies. I charge this and it probably dies. And then obviously the skill of that unit or model comes down to like movement and positioning and target priority, which are all important reflections of intelligence and skill in the game. But Genestealer Cult is so savagely kind of a glass cannon that when you make the wrong move, or you don't synergize well enough, or sometimes just dice happen, you get punished hard for it, right? Like 20 acolytes can go down in a stiff breeze. Neophytes whiffing on their shooting because you just forgot that one extra bubble over there to give them the +1 to hit, that kind of stuff just feels real bad. So it is a little bit interesting in that when things go right, usually you're smothering your opponent very quickly. And that's kind of the fun thing. I'm going to be all over the place, but that's the fun thing about the Codex too. It can be hard hitting. You can have 8 rock saws in the unit, or it can be 200 bodies that kill just about nothing, but you're wrapping units, you're holding objectives, you're pushing people off of areas, and then you are strategically kind of scalping them with, Sanctuses and Kellermorphs and various different units that are like more specific in how they work. And that's a different feeling too. So I love the Codex in that there's so many different kinds of lists inside of it. I think that started with the Dark Eldar Codex for me, and since then has been the gold standard for what a really good Codex should do. You should not look at a Codex and be like, there's the 4 good units, there's the 2 good HQs, maybe I spam them both in 2 battalions, and that's my list. And then someone oddly comes forward and does something different. But I like the Codex where it's like, I like that, and that, and there's no way I can fit all of it into a list. And now I need to write multiple lists, and I need to go to multiple tournaments, and they have different flavor in them. And I think Genestealer Cult Codex does that as well. I would say for me, and I could go on for days about all the positive because there's more, but the downside for me is that specifically Genestealer Cult needs to be making charges to operate just on any level. You can take the mass shooting one. That's fine, but they're also just not going to stand there and take shots, because nothing in the Codex can do that. Aberrants kind of can, but even they, you get a 5-up, then a 5-up for the most part. A lot of times that's going to fall off with a certain amount of DACA, right? So it's going to be a problem. That aspect of the Codex is great, but in a like 5 or 6 round GT that maybe I traveled to, it's tough because you're almost guaranteed to have one game where just a few too many charges got failed, despite them being 7 inches, despite you using your rerollable command point, and that feel is just rough. It's a rough one for me. So that's where the salt starts to come up just a little bit for me.
Mate, nice. No, that's the thing. Like, I recently had to write a list for somebody because we have like a list sort of guidance system, and I was over 6 hours reading their Codex. And then I was like, right, I better read the Genestealer Codex. Not the Genestealer Codex, the NID Codex.
Yeah.
And then the Guard Codex. And then I was like, right, what? And then I asked loads of questions, like, what sort of list do you like? What's your play style? What have you tried? What do you want to try next? What's your budget to buy? What models do you already have? Everything. And then I put together like a cheat sheet, these units do this, these units buff that. And then obviously a video of, look, here's some ideas on deploying stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I've just written a list for someone and I think it's going to cost me 300 quid to buy an army.
Yeah.
I just literally fell in love with the idea of I think I'm very much a player like that. I like the challenge of a skill set. It's why I originally liked Ynnari, because they can be extremely powerful when you get like that domino effect off. But then I just had to stop playing because I couldn't roll a 7 for my, to save my life. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Death Watch has been a bit different for me because, like you said, that's a skill level in a different way. But what I don't need any skill on is rolling dice, because I hit on 3s, re-roll, wound on 2s, re-roll. Happy days. I can just about do that. But with this list, I was like, there's still a lot of the multiplication of either numbers of attacks or numbers of shots but also, like you said, they just die so quickly if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And it's also fun because it's outside of power armor armies, they are trading too, right? Like because you are going to lose things, it's not necessarily a question of can I keep them alive? It's will they get their job done before they die, which is actually also very fun. And then their deploy mechanic is completely unique. And it's maligned by people as not being that powerful, and I agree. But I kind of like that it's not that powerful because I think if the entire army was 9 inches away from you and you had like auras of +2 charge and reroll and that kind of stuff, it'd be a very simple army, right? Like I surround you, I charge, I kill you, or I don't.
Yeah.
And I think that would kind of, I think it would undersell Genestealer Cult. So I'm happy to hear that you're excited about it, because I do think, again, you could spend more than 6 hours with that codex, come away with it, and still be like, well, I think this is what I'll do. And then you find other tricks, and there's just so much diversity in that codex.
Yeah, so for the guys that aren't familiar with Genestealer Cult, in regards to their, let's just cover a few of the basics. So you've got access to not just one book, have you, in regards to allies. So this is the first time NIDS have really got a proper ally, isn't it? So you've got your NIDS, your Genestealer Cult, and then also Genestealer Cult allow you to ally with Astra Militarum, correct?
Yep.
And then there's also Astra Militarum different type units within the codex itself. Blood Brothers?
Blood Brothers, yep.
And they interact a little bit differently.
Brood Brothers, anyway.
Brood Brothers, sorry, yeah. And they interact a little bit differently to how you would ally in Astra Militarum.
Yeah, they, like it or hate it, they made it so that when you do ally in Astra Militarum, you just don't get essentially their chapter tactics. So it is a nerfed version of Astra Militarum, but it still gives you access to all of their things outside of the named characters, that's good. It's all fluff, right? Like it would be kind of weird if you were to try and look at an Astra Militarum detachment and they got like all the right benefits, which is what kind of did happen in the Index and even 7th edition. But it's like, are they Cadian? Are they super Cadian? Like I feel like they were infiltrated by Genestealer Cult. So yes, they can wear the clothes. Yes, they took the tanks, but should they get all the bells and whistles that a like full regiment of actual Cadian infantry would get? Probably not. So in the game, it ends up being less powerful, but it still gives you access to just, the guard range, which is one of the most diverse ranges in the entire game, if not the most diverse.
And their CPs work a little bit differently if they do ally in, is that right?
Which one?
If you do ally in Imperial Guard, you only get half the CPs, is that right, for that detachment?
It's if you do... Yeah, so to be brutally honest, I stayed away from that in my list building, so I can't answer it off the top of my head fully, but it's something like if you do a mixed detachment, it's half CP. Or no, maybe if it's a full Astra Militarum, it's half.
I think it is.
But they nerfed it. Yeah, you don't, like I said, you don't get named characters, you don't get the chapter tactics, and then the CPs are less as well.
Okay, cool, nice. So what then, in regards to their deployment, obviously you mentioned they've obviously got some deployment shenanigans. How does that work with... I know I've seen loads of different forums, things asked, so I would love to sort of hear it from you, really. In regards to deployment, they get these little counters called blips.
Yep.
How is it that they work and operate on the table?
So you can put everything, for the most part, either underground, which is your kind of traditional deep strike, 9 inches away, that kind of stuff, or you can put them in ambush, which is the blip system, and just about everything can be a blip. If you're going first, you reveal them, and then they can also move. So it's kind of nice that way. If you're going second, then it's after your opponent does their movement phase that you then reveal the blips. And there's stratagems to add additional blips that end up not being anything. There's stratagems to move blips. There's characters that move blips, or a character, I guess, in the Nexos, to be fair. So there's all kinds of different things like that. But I think the cool part about the blip system that is a different way of thinking, because again, your first glance would be, well, this gets me closer, right? And this makes me anti-alpha strike. And it's like, no, not really. But it is kind of anti-alpha strike in the way that your opponent cannot come within 9 inches of a blip, no matter what. The blips cannot be destroyed, but you cannot come within 9 inches. So they act as really nice deployment insulation, if you will. You can have your throwaway units that then do get revealed, but it at least pushes back your opponent. So if they have those Eldar flyers, if they have things that move very quickly, that's nice.
Spears, something like that.
Shining spears, that's a good one. I think for me, again, the diminished, not even return, but the diminished effect of this is that there's no deep striking turn 1 for the most part anyways. So yes, you are pushing back some key units, which does feel nice when you do that correctly. And of course, especially for a player like you who's playing against very good Eldar lists and stuff like that, you will feel that impact. But then there's a bunch of other matchups where you're like, blip stuff, and they're like, yeah, okay, I'm sitting back here shooting anyways. And you're like, whoa, and then you pop up and it doesn't change anything. So it's cool.
Yeah, and especially then if you've got different terrain pieces, you might put those decoy blips down to go. You might put, say, all right, unit of 20 Genestealers. And then in regards to then, just to clarify and to be clear here, so when you put something in ambush with the blip system, that is actually a unit deployed. So when regards to your reinforcements, you still have to abide by the rule of 50% of the army has to be deployed. Mm-hmm. But that is your blips. Although the models aren't technically on the table, the blips are instead, right?
Yeah, but then there's funny things too, right? Like there's a stratagem that takes things that start off as a blip and they can actually put them underground. So that's kind of it's a little bit, it's funny you mentioned Yunari earlier, because that's another one where it's like they're an amazing army, really cool, but they break convention. And 8th edition, to a certain extent, was supposed to be, and is, a simplification from 7th edition. It's supposed to be the simpler, still very competitive version of Warhammer 40,000. Yeah. So that's funny when Yunari and Genestealer Cult pop up, where they're like, because I can tell you, when the codex came out, a lot of the GW guys kind of, they had that like, dang it moment, because they're like, the interactions and the way they break conventions makes for such weird questions. And of course, Warhammer people, when it goes out to the masses, there's thousands of people who play this wonderful game. They're like, question, in this weird situation with this stratagem and here, did I just break the game? And they're like, all right, that's not what we meant for. Wait for the FAQ. So it's kind of funny.
And that happens all the time, right? So you've got these new guys now that, and it's not even new because I think Genestealer Cult have it. So you can't deploy within 12 inches of one of the characters. Is that correct?
Yes, the Clamvis, yeah.
And then same for these new guys out of the Shadow Spear?
Phobos, yeah.
Yeah. But obviously you've got a Custode guy with the stratagem for 3 CPs where you can bring a unit in within 6.
Yep.
So
it gets even more complicated because with Genestealer Cult, like you just said, with a blip, you're not technically coming in as tactical reserves. You are deployed on the table. So this question was one of the first ones to ask, because within a Phobos, the Phobos, I can't remember what it is. It's like an Auspex scanner or something like that. It says units that come in or cannot come within 12 inches of them, and if they must be placed, they're destroyed.
Yeah.
So, of course, the interaction came up. It's like, well, if you can't be within 9 of the blip, but you can't be within 12 of this, once I reveal my blip, are those guys then destroyed? And it's like, you can see arguments on both sides. And like you said, this is a very Warhammer thing. Like, for however long you've been playing Warhammer, there's always been these discussions. There's no, I remember in 4th edition when we never had arguments because everything made sense. Like, no. And you know what? I like it. I like that the game is so complicated and is so diverse.
Yeah.
That these things do happen, and people are getting better about handling it too. It feels like there's less people that are like, I don't know, maybe I'm just having a better Warhammer experience, but less people like ultra trying to push rule breaking stuff, and that's their gimmick.
I think people's problem is that they open the codex and they think, right, I've just spent $20, $30, whatever it is on this codex, and I've just spent $200, $300, pounds, whatever, on this army. I'm going to read every rule so it goes in my favor. And I'm not even going to consider my opponent.
Right.
You had the whole like Calexus versus Dark Reaper debate, right? Do they hit on 3s or do they only hit on 6s because of the Calexus? Which one overrides which one? Like a friend asked me about the, and I'd love to get your thing, but this is my take on the Custode. Bring them, and I suppose Genestealer Cult have one where you can come within 3 inches, right?
Right.
And I said, look, I'm paying a CP for this. It's clearly meant to override anything else because I'm paying resources for this to happen. If I can break 9 inches, why can't I break 12 inches? I don't know. That was my take on it. But as a general rule, this is what happens unless you're spending a resource which then or you've got an ability that overrides that sort of general one. It's kind of like a tiered effect. These are the rules, 9 inches. You can bring in a 12, but then I've got something that can override both of those, and I'm within 3. Is that how it works, or?
Well, the brutally tough answer here is that there is like precedence, and then you would think that would kind of dictate, but there's competing precedence here, right? So typically, if 2 units have a rule that says this thing can never happen, then it goes to the controlling player's turn, and if their ability is the one that usually wins the day there. But if I'm deep striking onto a space that your Phobos ability says you cannot come within 12 of, it's funny because it would always break that, right? Like no matter what, if I'm deep striking, it's always going to override that because I'm the controlling player's turn. So very often in that case, you would then just have to look at it and say, it says you may deep strike within 3, but this says you can never deep strike within 12. So the never is the stronger language here. That means it cannot happen. That's generally how that would be ruled. But I almost, every time I get asked to be put on the spot, I'm not quite at the Reese level yet where I'll answer these questions really brazenly. Because there is, as strong as I feel about that, there'll be some other interaction that is just so gray and so washy that I'm like, I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, and the best thing to do in that situation, if you're in a competitive environment, is either discuss it before the game.
Yeah.
You say, look, I've got this stratagem, allows me to do this. I realize you've got this. How are we going to do this? And if there's not an FAQ, you can either do one or 2 things. I would probably suggest going to get a TO.
Beforehand is what I would do. So if you are taking like the Shadowspear Phobos guys to a tournament in this next 2 weeks, hit up the TO before you go and say, hey, I've got this rule. What happens if a Genestealer Cult guy brings his blip in? And you know what? TOs get it wrong as well, but at least it's off your back. You don't, like you just said, you can go to a tournament and you can have this conversation with an opponent, and 9 times out of 10, it'll be fine. But then you'll get that one player that just got on the wrong side of this and they're pissed and they're going to be like, no, this is how it's being played. And you're like, I'm not sure it's so black and white. Do you mind if we get a TO? They're like, yes, I mind. And you're like, well, I'm going to get one anyways. And then it becomes this weird, contentious, sweaty game.
Yeah.
And you never intended for it, but you're literally just trying to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, there's no avoiding that. But the best way to avoid that would be before the tournament even starts, ask the TO. They give you a ruling. Supposedly that becomes the law. And then if the situation does come up, be like, well, the TO answered this, and hopefully it's in a pamphlet or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's, out of your hands.
No, that's really good advice, mate. Really good. Because again, it puts people at ease. If they're thinking about tournaments or whatever, they're unsure. There's loads of things that you can do to get around these sort of subjects, right? So no, that's amazing advice, mate. So then with the codex then, what are some of the key units to kind of look out for?
Well, I hate to I'll give the specific answer, but the funny answer is that it's just chock full of great units. There's people writing entire like Brood Brother lists with just hundreds of bodies, and they're just spamming out shots. Anyways, that's the wax poetical nice answer. Specifically for me, I still really enjoy Aberrants because they do have a surprising amount of tenacity, and then they hit like an actual truck, right? Like you do power picks.
So these are basically beefed up guys.
Yeah.
Strong. They hit with sort of, like you said, sort of sledgehammers in a way, aren't they?
Yeah, it's 2 power pick attacks and it's 2 rending claw attacks, all of which are great at destroying infantry. But, if you do Twisted Helix and various different buffs, now you're at strength 8 or strength 7, and you're actually hurting knights as well with that D3 damage. So they're just very, very good. They can be very command point hungry if you want to. If you do the Vigilance Detachment for them, and if you buff them up a few different ways, they can soak up the command points and they can swing twice and twist a helix, but they will get you a lot of damage. And I find them to be great too because you can make them +2 to the charge, and then you can make them re-roll that as well. Or no. Anyways,
a lot of pluses, can't you, to their charge range?
It's +2 or 3. You can perfect ambush them for another D6. Like you can make them a pretty automatic charge. But then other big, what's up?
Sorry, the perfect ambush, that is a stratagem in which allows you to shoot when you arrive or move D6 inches, isn't it? As you're on the table. So you're just really guaranteeing that charge, aren't you? If you move an extra 4 inches, averagely, 3 to 4 inches averagely, then you get in the +1 or +2 to charge based on some of the old 6-inch buffing characters.
Clamavus and stuff, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're making a 4-inch, 5-inch charge, which is pretty reliable.
Or even less, yeah. And then you can use your command point reroll at the very least. So it becomes very reliable. If you do Cult of the Forearm Emperor as well, they just have a +1 to charge.
Yeah. And they come in unit sizes of 5 to 10?
Oh, for the aberrants?
Yeah.
Yes. And I like a full unit personally. And I do I only do 1 hypermorph, which is like the sergeant, but you can do 2. And then you do like the stop sign weapon for them. It's 6 attacks, very strong, low Ren, 2 damage flat. So it's just kind of reliable damage output. But that unit is your workhorse. It's just going to do a lot of damage. And you'll find the finesse with them is, again, making sure they're in cover if they can be, target prioritization, and then also surprisingly what they can do. Like if you do get them up, like I said, with Twisted Helix up to strength 8 and stuff like that, yeah, they'll bring a knight down. But less than that, even with all their attacks, unless you swing twice, generally speaking, they don't drop a knight. It's not like that kind of math. And someone will be like, well, Geoff, actually, I've done it. It's 21.3 wounds. Like, all right, yeah. But I'm telling you, again, in practice, if they have a 2-up save, or there's different factors that go into this.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised how little damage they will do to a knight, and if they have access to the stratagem to make them act at the top shelf, your aberrants are gone, and all of a sudden you gambled on something that didn't pay off. So it does take a lot of that kind of practice. But then even like, I'll jump around a little bit here, but the characters are huge. So like every list right now for Genestealer Cult has a Clamavus. It just has ridiculous, the +1 leadership. So obviously that synergizes with Mental Onslaught, which is a power that everyone's talking about right now, that with a few different ways to buff your leadership, like through the codex, the book Warlord trait, Clamavus, that kind of stuff. And then if you can reduce the leadership of a knight with horror off of Tyrannid powers, the -2 leadership off the guard powers, and then anything else you can find, all of a sudden you can auto kill a knight, which is of course the big goal. That if you can do that, it feels amazing for you, terrible for them. It takes a lot of things clicking into place, and it puts all your eggs in kind of one middle of the table basket. So I've got a lot of stories of people, yes, nuking a knight, but then the other 2 knights collapse on them, and they just, guess what, die. So it's not like it's so incredibly powerful, but it's very strong potentially. I like the Sanctus, and it's really cool that people are taking that. With a Relic sniper rifle, he's +2 to wound, and if you take damage from him and you're a Psyker, you perils. It's a D3 damage sniper rifle, and then it does a mortal wound on a 6, but with +2 to wound, it's now doing that mortal wound on a 4. So if you roll a 4 against a Psyker, they're taking a mortal wound, their perils for D3, and then if they fail their save, it's another D3. So it can one-shot some of the hardiest Psykers in the game. And Psykers, when they die from perils, if that is the final step of how they die, by the way, they explode and do D3 mortal wounds to everybody around them. So it's potentially extremely powerful, and it's in the package of, I think the Sanctus is 55 points or 65, 60, something like that. And then they have the Keller Morph, which is just a nuke character, but also thematically one of the funnest or most fun and cool characters in the game.
Is that like the pistol slinger?
That is the gunslinger, yeah. Shows up, and it's fun because he too catches people off guard. They're like, how many shots? Well, it's 4 off of these 2 pistols, and then I gave him the Relic pistols, got 3 off of this one. They're like, oh, okay. Yeah, but he's Bliss skill 2, and every hit he gets generates another hit. So it ends up being like 10 hits, and they're all -1, and then the Relic pistol's -2. They're all 2 damage. Characters go down very fast with this. So, again, very fun. Awesome model. And then they have some of the best psychic powers in the game as well, which is kind of reminiscent of Yannari. So their entire psychic tree is, 5 out of the 6 spells are really useful and cool. Even have mind control, so if you're not just straight up nuking that knight, you can just take it over and shoot somebody with it too. That's something people forget about.
Happy days. Same as the old Inquisitor have got that, haven't they?
Yep. There's a few, and then Treason is Ancient is the other way to do it as well.
Yep.
But other than that, I would say the units in the Codex that are really shining through right now for a lot of people. Like I said, it's kind of funny. It's just the base infantry, like Brood Brothers, allying Garden, giving them orders and having them just shoot out lots of stuff. You got to clear screens, So if you do run Aberrants and Abominate, Patriarch, Genestealers, that kind of stuff, you need to clear that out of the way to do that. Then a lot of people are allying in like Kraken Genestealers, a detachment of that. So again, they get that Neurothrope for the chance to cast the Horde to help out Mental Onslaught. But then you can just throw Kraken Genestealers around, wrap units, kill them, open up screens, that kind of thing, so that your Acolytes, if you're going that route, can do something. Your Atlan Jackals, which are the biker unit, people give them 5 demo charges. And then there's a stratagem for them to jump up on your face, throw 5d6 strength 8 -3 d3 damage grenades on you. And then if they didn't deep strike in, they can actually hightail it 14 inches away. And they're native -1 to hit, 2 wounds, tough 4. So there's kind of just fun little stuff like that. They can be very shooty and they can be very assaulting. It's great codex.
You can take whole units of hand flamers, can't you?
You could put, for 1 point on an Acolyte, you can give 20 guys a hand flame. There's no limitation. There's no, like, for every 5 you get to take 2. It's pistol. Actually, is it pistol? Maybe it's not pistol, but it's strength 3, 0 rend, 1 damage, which is not amazing, but it's d6 shots. So there is a stratagem, like you referenced earlier, to show up 3 inches away, and you cannot charge after you do that. But if you're 3 inches away, 20 guys with hand flamers. It's again funny though, because in your mind you're like 20 d6. Oh my God, you can kill not much. It's not like you show up outside of a night and you're like 20 d6 and it dies. No, it probably doesn't. But again, clearing those chafe units, you can kill 2 scout units for sure. It can kill a 10-man block of space. Like whoever it makes take saves. If their toughness is a 4 or 5. And less, they're going to die. If they're tough 3, they're super dead. You can kill 5 units of 10 guys if you want, I guess.
I mean, I lost a Blood Angels captain when I went over, because I played in the Belgium team tournament.
Oh yeah, if they get a character, it's 8th edition. It's the game of dice. So like if you have a 2-up save, I don't care. If you're taking 42 saves, you're probably losing that guy.
Yeah, no, for sure. So what then you've kind of mentioned some of the tricks that these guys have got. They've got stratagems to come in close. They've got stratagems to drop and then move. You've got some blood hitting units, some chaff clearing units, some character picking on units. So then what are some of the worst matchups for Genestealer Cult? If let's say we're taking like your average list, got a bit of chaff from the old Brood Brothers, you may be running in an ally of Kraken Genestealers, you've got your unit of Aberrants, you've maybe got a couple of these key characters, and obviously, like you said, you could spam whatever, right? But if you make a bit of a well-balanced list, a bit of this, bit of that, some of the Jackal boys, what are some of the worst matchups then for Genestealer Cult? What do they need to watch out for if you're a Genestealer Cult player?
So what I would first and foremost say is, again, it's such an interesting codex, because I feel like there are really, really tough matchups, but the codex is good in that you'll have options. You're not going to get to a table and be like, I mean, you could, I guess, if you write certain lists, but for the most part, a very good Genestealer Cult codex list can get to the table and be like, all right, I have some answers for this. They have answers for Psychic. They have answers for everything, Horde, tough targets, that kind of stuff. So it's very good that way. But there are certain matchups, and I would say it generally generates 2 from a person that's comfortable playing Genestealer Cult. Like if they're like, I know how to engage these guys, I played against them, or I've listened to people speak about it, I know the general battle strategy that's going to be good here. That's going to be your toughest matchup, because a lot of what the cult does is catch you off guard, and that's kind of their shtick. But board presence is a big deal. So a lot of their strength, like I said, comes from making those charges or from controlling aspects of the table. But if they have a huge footprint, and then they have abilities to say you cannot deep strike here, or they have forewarn, for instance, that kind of stuff, then all of a sudden where you show up and how you show up is being impacted, and that's kind of what they do. So that can be very, very tough for them. I would say DACA in general is really tough for them. If someone's like, I just like to run 3 Storm Ravens and Gilliman, because that's just that's what I think they do on an Ultramar, and you're like, oh my God. Because everything they shoot is just going to die, and they don't handle flyers super well, except for with Mental Onslaught, or if you wrote a pretty unique Genestealer Cult list that has, Tyranid elements in it or something like that. You're not charging them, and you're shooting. Yeah, the grenades would be great, but even that's going to be -1 to hit, so it's just a little bit less great. That's going to be a tough matchup. And
then the flyers are zoning you out as well, so you can't actually deploy near where you want to get to. So, because I actually played in Belgium, Genestealer Cult for the first time. The codex had literally been out a week or 2. All I saw was all these little red dots on the table. and I was running a Blood Angel, 2 Smash Captains and a Livy Dread, 3 units of Scouts, and then I had Watchmaster, 4 units of Veterans, 10-man units with Storm Bolters, and then a unit of 10 Terminators.
You probably bopped him, right?
So I just went, you can go first, mate.
Yeah.
Sure. And the thing is, like, he put his aberrants down to imperfect, does it say perfect ambush, is it?
Yeah.
His aberrants near my Terminators. So I said, right, cool, 2 CPs. I will Auspex scan you.
Oof.
So he had to then spend 4 CPs to stop me doing that. Is it 4 CPs for, or is it 3 for their vet?
It's just 3 for Cult of the, yeah.
So 3 CPs already spent. He then spends another 2 or 3 for the perfect ambush.
That's 3.
Yeah, so he spent 6 CPs already. He had to use a reroll on that dice because I think he rolled a 2. Got his charge off, and he killed 6 out of 10 Terminators.
And then lost that unit 100%.
He fought twice to kill them.
Oh, wow. So that's another 3. So it's 9, 10 CP now.
Yep. So then I just dropped in 30 veterans and tabled him in a turn. Yeah, so it was just that high rate of firepower, and also knowing that I was able, by making him go first, to see where he's going to play. What is his strategy? Because my army looks at, okay, where do my guys need to be most? And or the Genestealer Cult army does kind of the opposite, right? Where do my guys need to be? So it's that. But he played, in my opinion, too aggressively. So I think you don't need to bring down your aberrants turn 2 just because you can. He should have waited a little bit to see maybe if I put something down on the table, put some pressure on maybe, baited out some of my bigger units, and left some, just because I've got Terminators, leave them alone. They're slow. They're not doing anything. So, and he just didn't use terrain very well, didn't use the line of sight blocking terrain. So I think that matchup could have gone very differently based on him doing a few different things, target priority. Spending 10 CPs to kill a unit of 10 Terminators is... Well,
so this is a good example, because in this situation, you're absolutely right, the way you broke that down, but there's actually even tools in the codex, again, to answer for that. So there's a stratagem where as long as you are completely in terrain, you can actually make that unit have the character rule, in the sense that they cannot be shot unless they're the closest. And this I liken to the Tanglefoot Grenade in the Custodies Codex, where everyone's heard of it, I think, on some level. Obviously, Genestealer Cult's newer, so maybe you haven't heard of it, but it's one of those, I was planning for something, you took that away from me, and that's hugely powerful. So for people that aren't familiar, the Tanglefoot Grenade is off of a Custodies infantry unit within 12 at the beginning of movement or at the beginning of the assault phase. I can hit you with this. It's just a 1-point command point stratagem, and it just says D6 away from your charge or D6 away from your movement. This is huge for a couple reasons. One, if you're in close combat with somebody, you can D6 their movement out. So if it's 5 or 6, they remain within 1 inch of that unit that they were expecting to fall back from, so that you could then shoot them. Or they just came in, or they're, it's a 7-inch charge, but all of a sudden you roll a 5 on your Tanglefoot. Now it's a 12-inch charge. And they were like, I was going to make a 7-inch charge. Like, I was counting on that. And now it's not, I'm not making that charge. I'm just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's huge. And this is the same in this way. So if he would have put and if he could have, we don't know if he could have, but well, you do, but for the purposes of this thought practice, let's just assume you can bring the aberrants in. They're on top of the Terminators, and then you can bring in a couple other units to kind of create, a central area or whatever, which then pushes out your veterans and their deep strike. But then you actually spin this command point on your aberrants, which you position to be in terrain, or hopefully you could. And all of a sudden, you're like, well, the aberrants are going to be gone. And he's like, no, you're not. And then you're like, whoa, hang on. And now you're killing chafe units, and then you're getting countercharged. And that's a cool tool that they have at their disposal as well.
No, that's incredible. So then, obviously, you've got the access to 3 codexes. Have you got any tips for balancing between, do you go all of one, or a bit of flavor from the NIDS maybe, or maybe all 3? What are some of your sort of tips there? Because obviously the Genestealer Cult lack a bit of range. So is that something you can bring in from the guard if that's the sort of type of player you are?
Yeah. So right now, so the biggest thing I have a tough time with in my Genestealer Cult games is clearing chafe, like just 5 scouts or 10 guardsmen, these kind of things. if I just rely on pure Genestealer Cult shooting, which is, it can tend to be, hitting on 4s, maybe 3s, and then it can either be high volume or it can be low amount of shots, but better rend. They're like pseudo last cannons coming off of their buggies. Can't remember what they're called anymore. But I find situations where like 1 or 2 guys survive, they spin a command point or 2 to keep them there, and then they just shut down my turn 2, and my turn 3 gets a little bit messy. So I allied in a Chronos detachment of 2 Neurothropes, 3 Rippers, and then 6 Hive Guard. They can shoot twice for only 2 command points. They're hitting on 3s, rolling 1s. They're strength 8 -2, D3 damage, ignore cover, ignore line of sight, range 36. So I find them to be just a very big, gigantic cone of like, I'm going to clear this space. And very often they're shooting at super non-sexy units too. They're like, removing 5 scouts, removing 5 scouts. Okay, well now that whole right flank is open for turn 2. Perfect ambush in the Abominants or 20 Acolytes, whatever. And then they jump onto stuff and they kill and they cleave and they get on top of the meteor subjects in the middle of that. If they really have a lot of chafe, then maybe I spend 2 turns shooting and drop in turn 3. But Hive Guard are very good at removing stuff, and then they synergize well with the Genestealer Cult because you can use blip deployment to keep things away from them, like those Shining Spears or something like that.
Yeah.
And then Chronos allows you to shut down psychic powers as well. So Word of the Phoenix, that kind of stuff, that they really are relying on getting off. You're stopping that from happening. And then Neurothropes are 2 of the best units in the entire game.
No, love it, mate. Because I think you raised a really good point there, actually. And I think if you're listening, obviously listening to this and delve a little bit deeper into what Geoff just said there, is that you've got an expensive unit of Hive Guard, and their sole purpose is not to try and kill big horrible things. Their sole purpose is to allow you to win later on in the game. So you're setting up the win for maybe turn 4 or 5. You're not just thinking, right, how much stuff can I kill turn 1? And I think that's something as a Deathwatch player I do. I spend turn 1 with my Crass Knight, not killing their knight, not killing their tanks. I go, right, he's going to pick on this unit, pick on that unit, and I'm going to clear the way for my veterans to drop in. So you could do that exact same thing with maybe, if Nids aren't your flavor, maybe tank commanders, Punishers.
Sure.
Punisher cannons don't really need the what are they called? Like the traits of guard, because they're always going to get 20 shots. They're going to fire twice still. They still get access to orders, so they can re-roll 1s on themselves or whatever. They can move 5 inches, put out 40 shots at 24-inch range, and they'll just go, scouts dead, unit of 10 dead. And again, you're using the blips there to make sure your tanks can't get tagged. So in tank commanders are another really good point efficient unit for what they do, and over the course of the game, attrition will just put down a lot of things in place. So you've got some really nice elements there that I think people don't think about. But like you said there, what I like is that you've highlighted a weakness in your list, and you've gone, right, what is it that I need to plug in to make this work? Because a novice Genestealer player maybe takes the Aberrants, they take this, they take that, and they're like, well, I just can't get anything to work.
Yeah, and that's, again, the difficulty, but the glory that is this codex is that there's so much that you can take, and there's so much that works, but what does it work with? What kind of style of list are you going to? And then even when you do get to that style, it doesn't pilot itself. Like I said, it's got some of the highest skill ceilings. So it's very rewarding. It's very tricksy, and it takes a lot of practice, which is also a missing element for a lot of people. They're like, right, it's a gorgeous army. I love the models, but I only play 2 or 3 games a month or something like that. Genestealer Cult Codex is going to be a very tough one for you because, like I said, it creates, and I think this is probably something that the GW guys would not want to be said or to have experience, but it is what it is. If you don't have a lot of experience with it, if you write a bad Genestealer Cult list, it dies so hard and it's so unsatisfying because there's not that unit that just hulks up the field and destroys stuff. The Abominant comes close, but even he, if exposed, just dies. So it takes practice, it takes knowing your codex, and then it takes utilizing the strategies that are meant to shore up its weaknesses. Again, like Acolytes, they're a tough 3 model with a 5-up save, but they have 2 rending attacks and 1 knife attack, and then you can very inexpensively put in a strength 8 -3 or 4, whatever the saw is, 2 damage, and it doesn't even have a minus to hit. So it's just like, each guy is all of a sudden now doing 2 attacks at that kind of strength. And again, there's ways to even buff that further. So they hit hard and they will destroy things, but if they're in the wrong place, boop, 10 Marines double tapping will just evaporate them. It's not even close.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to find soon is the codex been released. It's going to be maybe 6 to 9 months before we start to see some of these top players thinking, hang on a minute, there's definitely play here. Because like you said, the appeal of Genestealer Cult is because of the ceiling of skill that it requires to run them fully. So I think we're going to start to see a lot of these top tier players start to run Genestealer Cult because it's going to be their next challenge, right? That's why we play this game. We like a mental challenge, and this is going to be certainly one list for that. I don't know that much fluff behind the Genestealer Cult, but you know how typically you might get the Orc player who's shouting the warg at the back, and he's had a Orc army since 2nd edition, and he's just an Orc through and through. I don't think we get that with Genestealer Cult, and I could be completely wrong, but like I don't look at the models necessarily of Genestealer Cult and go, oh my god, I love the models. I don't read the fluff of Genestealer Cult and go, oh my god, I really love their fluff. I look at their rule set and I go, this is going to challenge me as a gamer.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, but I would tell you, if you dive into their fluff, it's some of the absolute most grim dark there is. It's incredible. It's
amazing.
Like their strategies, or one of their strategies is, well, their vect, if you will, is called a plan ages in the making. I believe it's or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But very often they'll set up their day of ascension, their kind of uprising, hundreds of years it'll take. So it's like, and in their fluff, that's kind of what happens. They literally are breeding into the society. They're shutting down power plants and major military installations. They're stealing weapons and tanks, and they're hiding the entire time that they are more and more alien-looking mutants in society. They'll either hide in the sewers if they're really bad, like the Abominants and Aberrants, or they will eventually end up looking fully human until they give birth to a pure strain Genestealer, which is literally a human woman giving birth to a Genestealer. It's like, wow. It's actually so dark and so insidious that when you read the codex, it's kind of funny because they say these things, but they don't say what that means, and you have to kind of think about it for a second. You're like, that's actually super messed up. Like it's beyond gross. The patriarch or a Genestealer lands on a planet, becomes the patriarch. Like they mutate into a bigger Genestealer basically, and then they start abducting people and depositing its DNA into their DNA stream, and then hijacking their bodies. They then get mind controlled by him. They start serving his purpose. They hear his voice. And then as the cult grows inside of a planet or its society, familiars start mutating or just kind of appearing. And I even love that fluff too, because like they're little familiars. They don't have a story of like out of a gene pool, like one is born or something like that. They just kind of appear. So they're actually maybe warp. They're like little demons, perhaps, or like Tyranid demons, or they just show up, but there's not really a full explanation on that. And I love what's inferred, but not outwardly said. Yeah. So it's just really fun that way.
Well, I didn't know that. I've learned something today. Yeah, I've just started an AdMech army.
Yeah,
and I've just started looking at the models, and I'm like, actually, this is pretty dark. Like, when you look at the fact that you've got essentially a guy here that's took both of his legs off and mutated on certain. So I'm doing some sort of cool conversions at the moment, and to really sort of look at this, like we've got what was humans now gone very robotic, and you've got flesh, you've got metal combined together, and it does actually add the flavor to it. So when you're putting them on the battlefield, I don't know, like I got really behind the Death Watch because I was like, right, these boys are just there to do a purpose. No, I love that, mate. So anyway, we'll wrap this up. But so you're going to Serbia, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea what faction you're playing yet, or is it all top secret at the moment?
It's a little bit secret, but also the honest answer is it's far out enough that we're still kind of experimenting and seeing what we can come up with.
Yeah.
There's specialized guys on the team, like, obviously Sean Naden's going to take Eldar or something, right? So there are people that have their slots full, but for me, I'm not there.
Yeah. No, I love, and you've obviously got the big FAQ coming out that could change some things, and then the ETC obviously adapt their missions in FAQs based on what they perceive and things. So,
right.
And because I'm going to be going over to the Serbia or the ETC tournament. Unfortunately, I didn't get picked this year for the England squad. So fingers crossed, maybe next year, if I pull my finger out, do well at some tournaments this year. But I am going to be playing in the singles event, and then I'll be commentating on the stream over the course of the sort of team event, which should be pretty fun. So no, look forward to seeing you there, mate. And then obviously the London Grand Tournament again. But then I hear Chaos could be quite good as well coming out soon. So maybe I have to get you back on in the future and we can talk about Chaos.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'm super, super excited about them.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of their pre-releases and listening to some of the podcasts that you've been on. So you're on Chapter Tactics is another good resource for people to check out. And where is the best place for people to find? Because I listened to one of your reviews on Genestealer Cult, which went into it so well. So hopefully we've given people a bit of some highlights today. But where can they find you and more information about 40K?
I'm iNcontroL. That's my gamer handle, one word. But on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff, I'm iNcontroL TV, just all one word. And I do a lot of Warhammer 40K content. Mostly take pictures of it on Instagram, and then for YouTube, I haven't as much lately because I've been on an insane travel schedule. But I will be getting back to codex reviews and writing up lists and just doing discussions and stuff like that on there. And then I stream on Twitch, and that's mostly StarCraft, but we started to stream some Warhammer games, which I then upload to my YouTube as well. Very casual. It's not super, we usually have someone running the stream and then two guys playing. So there's a lot of Warhammer talk, and it's very fun, and I encourage you guys to check it out. But just check it out. I guess I shouldn't undersell it.
No, mate, no, I definitely would. Like, I love all the podcasts that you're on. I think you've got such a great insight on the game, and the way you look at it is brilliant, and more people should be learning from you. So, mate, I've got no problem with plugging your stuff, and that's why I wanted you on here. Hopefully I'll get Sean on as well for another interview.
Sure.
I've just messaged him actually and said, would he be interested? So I want to bring, some really good players onto Vanguard Tactics and talk about some of this cool stuff, because I just want people to learn that competitive play isn't just for the beardy, cheesy, horrible people you get. Because often, we've all got one of those guys at the club, right? Or have had at some point. But actually, some of the top competitive players are some of the nicest guys you've ever met.
Absolutely.
And, I'd like to say that we built a friendship based on one game. And it's just, that's how it happens, isn't it? So
it is.
It's such an incredible community. So, Geoff, thanks so much for your time, mate. I really appreciate it. And hopefully you'll be seeing me at Genestealer Cult Army soon.
Sounds fun. Thanks.
All my aberrants will have barbells and protein shakes in their hands, I think I'm going to go for. Yeah. But, mate, enjoy Adepticon and the rest of your day, and I'll send all the links over so people can go and find all your work. But thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
So I hope you liked that video with myself and Geoff. Remember, guys, if you want the Aberrants cheat sheet, head over to our website, www.vanguardtactics.com, along with all the other goodies that we give out for you guys that do sign up for the emails. And also, the last thing is, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and do hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. Until next time, see you later.